Welcome to the GCN News Show. This week, my troubles continue. Am I finished yet? Now, aside from cleaning every single car in the Astana car park by way of an apology to Vincenzo Nibali, we've also found time in this news show to catch up on all the Tour de France news, the new Fuji Transonic, we've had a little discussion with Tommy Voeckler about crashes, plus all your usual favourites like Caption of the Week, Tweet of the Week and Strava Club. We've seen some great racing this week. Stage 5 was always going to be a classic, passing as it did over the cobbles of northern France, but it was the weather that really made that stage. Lars Boom confirmed his pavé potential, perhaps not really a great surprise given that the guy is a former cyclocross world champion. He looked exceedingly at home in the mud. As a former cyclocross world champion, how difficult were the conditions for you?
For me, not so difficult. I was feeling good on the couples. I had my technique a little bit back from the old days in the cyclocross, and I was confident on the cobbles, so for me it was okay.
So were you actually having to take risks on the cobbles? Like, we know that they're super slippery when wet, but you know, on the corners, were your wheels sliding out, or was it relatively straightforward?
No, it was okay. I think if you take a corner in the wet couples, you take inside and then back on the high end of the couple again.
And were you surprised to see guys like Sagan and Cancellara being dropped by Vincenzo Nibali, a man who's not ridden on or raced on the cobbles before?
I think the guys from Astana pulled really hard, so and the tempo. I put the tempo sometimes really hard on the couples, and Sagan sometimes. So everything can happen in a race like this when it's really cold and when it's wet. You have to eat properly and think about that stuff, and sometimes it can happen that you drop can be dropped by guys like that.
Perhaps though, the biggest surprise came from Astana. No, wait, hear me out. Astana haven't placed better than 18th in the last 5 editions of Paris-Roubaix, but yet on this stage, they absolutely bossed it. They placed Jakob Fuglsang in second, and Vincenzo Nibali third on the stage, put minutes into both Peter Sagan and Fabien Cancellara, both pavé stars, and also minutes into the other GC guys. Now, perhaps Jakob Fuglsang isn't quite the surprise. He is, after all, former under-23 world mountain bike champion, but Vincenzo Nibali was incredibly confident on the cobbles. Very, very impressive, and one wonders whether he might be tempted to have a crack at Paris-Roubaix off the back of that. Now, Lars Boom's victory was also notable for one other thing, that he's not German. That's right, German riders have won 5 out of the first 10 stages of this year's Tour de France. Marcel Kittel obviously helping them onto that tally with 3 stage wins. Andre Greipel took 1 in another sprint, and then Tony Martin took an exceedingly good stage win to Mulhouse on stage 9 with an epic solo breakaway. Now, we can't talk about the Tour de France this week without touching on the issue of crashes. There's always tons in the first week of the Tour de France, but this year, more than perhaps any since 2011, have we seen more GC riders go out. Chris Froome crashed 3 times, ultimately breaking his wrist and withdrawing on stage 5, and then most recently we've seen Alberto Contador also crashing on stage 10 and withdrawing due to a broken tibia, which is exceedingly painful, so I'm told. Not as bad as a broken neck, actually. Now, capitalising on the absence of both his biggest rivals, Vincenzo Nibali took an imperious stage victory at the first summit finish of the race to Plateau de Belleville. It took just one attack to get away from the diminished group of favourites before he forged clear to take an imperious victory. Best of the rest, the French riders were looking particularly impressive, with Thibaut Pinot of FDJ leading home that group of contenders just behind Nibali. Now, the results of our Caption of the Week competition. Honourable mention must go to Peter Stothard, who came a close second with this. "Come over here, lad, and let me sign your magazine. I'm armless. However, the winner is the catchily named SG Fisher 100790. Is your arm strong enough to sign this? Armstrong? Who the are you calling Armstrong? Catchy name there. That's quite funny. Caption competition photo for this week. Tony Martin winning stage 9 of the Tour de France. As ever, I'll try and get you started. Tony Martin tries to give himself a high five.
I do like cheese, but not in that kind of quantity, really.
I think that was actually quite funny. Genuinely, I think that's a funny one. So, for a lot of riders, the Tour de France is actually about more than just the racing. That's because a lot of people are still negotiating their contracts for the next year. Ironically enough, it's actually the rest day where most of that negotiating happens. Now, riders aren't officially allowed to talk about things until August the 1st, but as usual, Bradley Wiggins seems to have made something of a premature announcement. He spoke to Gazzetta dello Sport the other day saying that he is in fact going to stay at Team Sky, which has taken many people by surprise. After all, he was left out of their tour roster, but apparently he's going to reassess his objectives and go full gas for Paris-Roubaix and the hour record. Now, this is Fuji's new aerodynamic model, the Transonic. I reckon they've saved approximately 55 seconds over their previous aerodynamic bike over 40 kilometres at 300 watts. Now, obviously, it's pretty impossible to test those under normal conditions, but that's still quite a bold claim. They've taken quite a new approach to this. A lot of aerodynamic bikes we've seen have the brake calipers underneath the bottom bracket there. Now, Fuji have said that they've removed them from there and put them back in this traditional place. Not for terms of aerodynamics, but brilliantly for practicality, which I think is an excellent and really underrated thing about new bikes. So as we'd expect from a new aerodynamic bike, all the tube shapes are camtail looking. The back end obviously is tucked well inside the seat tube there. It looks very aerodynamic. One thing that I really like particularly is the direct mount brakes. I don't know quite why, but they've got a Shimano front brake at the back here. Like I said, no idea why, but it's the new direct mount brakes. So they've got more power, and also, crucially, they've also got more clearance back there. So even though it's a super aerodynamic frame, apparently you can squeeze 28mm tyres in, which I think is seriously cool. Now, crashes are unfortunately shaping the face of this Tour de France. We've seen Chris Froome and Alberto Contador eliminated from theirs, not to mention the amount of GC riders that are suffering time loss or injury through theirs. Now, we've caught up with Tommy Voeckler, probably one of the most experienced riders in the Tour de France peloton, to find out just what he thought was going on.
I think this year it was a little bit different because the previous year you really had one big crash on the first week of the Tour. This year it's not only one big, but different with only 2 or 3 or 4 guys, but with many pain, many injuries all the day long on the break, and we are all we have a big stress, and that's why so many crashes happen.
Is there anything you think that can be done to help with the tension?
Yeah. It's been a couple of years that I said that in the earphone, in the radio, the team director always say, of the race, you have always 9 riders of each team together. My idea is to widen all the team directors say, okay guys, we put only 3 guys with our leader. Instead of having 198 riders wanted to be at the front, you have only 90 riders, so I think it could be a possibility.
Now, coming up on the channel this week, as well as all of our usual great content, we've got daily features from the Tour de France. So we're inside the mechanics bit of the truck at the back here. As you can see, there's 2 work stands here, so for 2 mechanics, that's Gary there in the background. Now, it won't have escaped your notice that there's a serious amount of Pinarellos in here. And also, stage 14 on Friday is well worth a watch. And if you haven't seen it already, our preview for that is already on the channel. Go take a look, it is incredible. The Rabo Live team have continued their fantastic run of form at the Giro Rosa, taking 1st, 2nd and 3rd overall in general classification. Marianne Vos took the win, Pauline Ferrand-Prévot took 2nd and Anna van der Bruggen took 3rd. They didn't get it all their own way though. Emma Pooley of Lotto Belisol lowered their strike rate a bit by taking 3 out of a possible 9 stage victories. And on GC, Mara Abbott of United Healthcare, winner last year, came close to repeating after her impressive ride on stage 8's summit finish. However, she could put only seconds into her rivals and not the minutes that she needed, leaving Marianne Vos to take the win. Elsewhere in Europe, Team Sky's Peter Kenyak took the win in the Tour of Austria. Now, it's a week long, it's actually one of the hardest races in the calendar, even though it does get overshadowed by the Tour of France. Now, as well as being a tough parkour, Peter Kenyak also reports that the Tour of Austria has really nice hotels, which is more than can be said for the Tour de France. In GCN Strava Club, cycle doctor number 1, having had 1 week off after his record-breaking 7-day total, is now back at the top. Clearly he's gone a bit soft. He's only ridden 1,088.6 kilometres this week. The longest ride is Eric Domprobost for 589.3 kilometres, and the climbing total is Matthias Dell with 22,403 metres. Tweet of the week is Peter Sagan. He's not been able to finish first yet, but he's still clearly got mad skills. Right, that's it from us for the news show this week. I, for one, am really interested to know what's going to happen to the racing this week. I think I have a personal vested interest, in fact. Stay tuned, we'll have all the news. I'm armless. It does look like he's trying to give himself a I'm armless.
For more GCN top 10s, click here.
And if you haven't yet subscribed, simply click on Matt. You know it makes sense.